Hello everybody, my name is Wren and I love a recovering martyr. For this video, Timuscor of the Spells, Swords, and Stealth series by Drew Hayes is going to be the example to help run the idea home and also give me a freebie to indulge in my enjoyment of the books. This video was actually prompted by a comment on one of my other videos, so if there's something you really enjoy out there in the great wide media landscape, don't be afraid to shout it out, or leave a comment on a media critic's YouTube channel. Good things happen when you spread some joy. But for now, let's get back to this video by asking, what is a recovering martyr? I hope its meaning is pretty intuitive, but I am biased towards understanding it as the one coining the term, so let me explain. A recovering martyr is a character who was, or had the desire to be, a martyr, but has since come to realize that martyrdom isn't the correct path for them. There are plenty of different kinds of martyrs in fiction, ranging from those who enter or stay in bad relationships in the hope that their love will redeem their partner, or because they don't know what else to do, to those who are prepared to or have already committed a heroic sacrifice, having known the consequences of their actions and having judged the cause, usually saving the world, to be worth it ahead of time. And, of course, the types like Timuscor, martyrs without a cause who will recklessly throw themselves into situations that need not be so dire, willing to die in order to make sure that no one else is harmed in pursuit of whatever the objective of the moment is. To be a recovering martyr is to try and move beyond that self-sacrificial behavior by leaving the bad relationship, finding a third non-sacrificial option, or leaving the heroics to someone else, or by recognizing that they cannot stand up for their ideals and protect their loved ones if they are dead. The choice of the word recovering is very intentional. Some characters are allowed a lot of progress in that regard, whereas others will always circle back to that self-sacrificial behavior. With the series still ongoing, there is no guarantee which way Timuscor will ultimately end up, but for now, I think there's a good argument for him keeping his character growth. So now that you have something of an idea as to what it means for a character to be a recovering martyr, let's take a look at Timuscor. We meet Timuscor in the first Spells, Swords, and Stealth book, titled NPCs. Within the universe of the series is a fantasy role-playing game called Spells, Swords, and Stealth. A character named Russell is running a new, more realistic module of the RPG for some guys he met at the local game shop. 3 veteran RPG murder hobos, Mitch, Terry, and Glenn, as well as a completely new player, Tim. These 4 players get themselves killed within the game right at the start of the adventure. This is where the true plot of NPCs really kicks off. As Russell's players begin rolling up their new characters in the so-called real world, 4 non-player characters within the game are confronted with the fact that adventurers on a journey to answer summons from the Mad King of the land just dropped dead in front of them. This is the kind of thing that gets humble villages wiped off the map in retribution. So they hatch a plan. The king has never met the adventurers, just knows that they are a barbarian, a paladin, a rogue, and a wizard. So Thistle the gnome and Grumph the half-orc, alongside the humans Eric and Gabrielle, steal the dead adventurer's gear and letter of summons and set off. It's an excellent story, and anyone who has some experience with fantasy RPGs will likely be at least somewhat amused at how the intrepid NPCs subvert tropes about their archetypes. But you'll notice I haven't mentioned Timuscor yet. That is because to really introduce Timuscor and understand the real juicy parts of his story, you need to know about the distinction between adventurers, those avatars of the players in the real world, and NPCs, the free-thinking, everyday folk that inhabit the complex and vibrant world these adventurers play in. Timuscor, when he is first introduced, is an adventurer, a knight controlled by Tim in the real world. He wants and does as Tim plays him to want and do. He doesn't fit in well with his party, because Tim earnestly wants to play the game, while Mitch, Terry, and Glenn want to murder pretty much every NPC they run into for a power trip, and only care about collecting the loot and seeing the numbers on their character sheets go up, so they can kill more NPCs to get more loot to make the numbers go up, and, well, you get the picture. Most of the plot of NPCs follows Thistle, Grumph, Eric, and Gabrielle as they get a feel for their role as adventurers before being sent into the bowels of a terrifying dungeon by the Mad King to kill an even madder wizard who is in possession of a strange, indescribably powerful artifact fragment. Actually, the artifact's power is somewhat describable, as even a fragment is enough to allow an NPC who holds it to recognize that alien beings are controlling the adventurer population, as well as allow said NPC to manipulate the dice rolls of the real world that are manipulating those adventurers. Which is exactly what Eric uses it for in the final battle of the novel.
A new hand touches the beacon.
And since Eric is a bit more shrewd, actually has connections with his loved ones, and is by and large more mentally stable than the Mad Wizard, he manages to not only swing the battle in their favor by making Team Murder Hobos get a slew of critical failures on their attack rolls, he also completely severs the connection between Tim in the real world and Timuscor in the spells, swords, and stealth world. In the wake of this severed connection, Timuscor is nearly a blank slate. But only nearly. He knows his name, his life's goal to become a paladin, and is aware of the dissonance between the goal he sought to reach and the awful company he has kept and enabled until now. But how much of what remains is Timuscor and what is Tim's influence is left unclear. Before Tim was bullied into making a knight despite wanting to play a paladin and took control of Timuscor, did Timuscor ever actually wish to be a paladin? Or even a knight? There is no saying with only the context of the first book. After all, no one really knows what the full capabilities of the artifact, named the Bridge, or anything about how players in the real world unknowingly overtake beings inside the game. So we move on to book 2. Split the party. Here, Timuscor is finally part of the cast we spend the majority of our time with, the NPC party. Timuscor presents as an introspective, cautious young man, very aware of how much he doesn't know about himself, how little trust he has with some of his new party members, although they are quite friendly and accommodating. He's unsure of his place in this pre-established unit, as well as his own abilities now that he isn't under the influence of an adventurer. A few really important things are set up for Timuscor in this book, though they are by and large set up for the later books. First of all, despite his deep-seated desire, Timuscor has never been devoted to a god. He has always simply believed that by doing his best to uphold justice and goodness, one of the just gods would see his efforts aiding in their mission and grant him the power to aid them further in something like a reward by making him a paladin. Second, he has his first solo aside with the party paladin Thistle, who quickly recognizes that Timuscor truly desires to be a paladin. Third, even after learning that the only known way to become a paladin is to be a chosen member of a god's devoted followers, Timuscor decides that isn't for him, and offers a prayer to all the gods of good alignment. In his prayer, he states that he isn't a worshipper, he won't become a worshipper, but he will always stand up against the forces of darkness and protect those in need. And if none of the gods of goodness are willing to aid him in that, then he doesn't want what they are selling. Fourth, Timuscor adopts, or perhaps more accurately is adopted, by Mr. Peppers. Mr. Peppers is a mana-made boar, summoned by a wizard as part of a sounder of magic boars to run through a hall and set off any booby traps. Mr. Peppers survives, where his fellow summons did not, then gets right on with helping with the adventure far beyond what even his summoner expects. Then he just doesn't despawn when the spell ends and the wizard isn't summoning him anymore. There is another weird, awesome thing that Mr. Peppers does in this book, but we'll get to that. Fifth, at the first opportunity to get himself killed to save the whole party, including the pre-existing self-sacrificing party paladin, and die a paladin's death, Timuscor goes full-on
"You shall not pass"
martyr mode and starts fighting monsters to a standstill inside a collapsing tunnel with only Mr. Peppers at his side. And sixth, Mr. Peppers. This boar looted. And I don't mean snuffled about and just got a trinket caught in its teeth. I mean looted, with purposeful and strategic intent, a ring of teleportation. Then he uses it to get Timuscor out of the collapsing tunnel with the exact right timing to save our boy's life and prevent any monsters from getting past. Then, after all this is said and done, and everyone is safe, he still doesn't leave. He's a party member now. He doesn't give two shits about his summoner. He's traveling with Timuscor, and since he's the only reason Timuscor is alive, no one else in the party has objections. That's actually quite a lot of foundation laying for a relatively short book that is primarily focused on buffing the wizard and putting the paladin into a plinko machine of duty. Now we have a godless knight whose greatest ambition in life is to throw himself into a calling where he believes dying for the general idea of goodness is the pinnacle of achievement. A martyr without a cause and his new boar companion. This takes us to book 3 of the series, Going Rogue. Once again, the growth going on with Timuscor is more background as this book focuses on buffing the rogue's abilities. However, this book does get the ball rolling for the path Timuscor is heading down and shifting his views of what it means to be a paladin. It starts out with a cryptic detail that Timuscor isn't privy to in this book, but is important for the rest of the party to be aware of. Mr. Peppers cannot be seen by the gods, as Thistle is told by his god, Grumble. This boar has transcended beyond a summon that refused to disperse, and now has things going on that even gods cannot fathom. Next up is Timuscor using his downtime to tour the temple district of the city they are in, trying to see if any of the gods might have the kind of morality and personality to accept a paladin who serves the innocent but has no interest in offering undying devotion or earning glory in their god's name when he could simply be out there saving people. It doesn't go well. Third point for the third book, an unknown supernatural force comes to Timuscor in a near-death moment and tells him that his entire concept of what it means to be a paladin is shallow and incorrect. The mysterious and ancient unknown force tells Timuscor to think on what paladinhood truly entails, and to give his answer to their herald when he figures it out. Point number 4. Other people recognize, call out the fact, and question why Timuscor follows the moral tenets of a paladin outside of combat, even when he has never been chosen by the gods to follow the calling. And fifth and final for this book, Gabrielle calls out the fact that Timuscor is in a poor position to recommend his other party members behave with caution when he throws himself towards death whenever danger so much as glances at them. Some of these points may seem like pretty trivial things, but they are the pitons splitting the rock. The smaller share of focus Timuscor receives in this book is to sow doubts in his mind. Not doubts in his desire to be a paladin, but instead doubts in what it means to be a paladin. After all, how can he hope to become one if he doesn't even know what he's hoping to be? All of this comes to a head in the 4th book of the series, Siege Tactics. It's Timuscor time, mostly, and our boy is traumatized. Compartmentalizing doesn't work forever, especially when you get confronted with knowledge that you didn't know you were craving. We start with the party stumbling on a heavily warded and concealed village. They are confronted by a powerful necromancer at the village border who tests their moral fortitude by demanding they abandon Gabrielle in exchange for the rest of the party being allowed to leave unharmed. Unbeknownst to our NPC party, if they pass the test by refusing to abandon Gabrielle, then the villagers will offer them rest and fresh supplies before heading on their way. If they fail, then they will be lucky if they manage to flee. Obviously, our tight-knit band of heroes passes, but something more happens. Upon getting a good look at Timuscor, the necromancer immediately changes tact. The necromancer recognizes Timuscor as one who was once piloted by a being from another world, just like every other citizen of the village. This leads to Timuscor finding an opportunity he never thought he would have: to talk to others like him, who know what it is to have a capital A adventurer puppet your body and the void of uncertainty that followed their absence. We'll call this 1.5 since it ties so heavily into the first point. Second important thing, Timuscor's assertion that he has always wanted to be a paladin is finally given a qualifier, as he now has a better understanding of his own circumstances. His desire to be a paladin is his own, and was mirrored in his connection with Tim. As though Timuscor's own self-introspection wasn't enough, this idea also gets given weight by the observations of an experienced former adventurer, who posits that his desire to be a paladin is the only sense of self Timuscor had developed separate from his adventurer influence before their link was severed. More than just this solidifying of Timuscor's sense of self, we begin to see a shift in how Timuscor sees his role in the battlefield and the party, no longer aiming for sacrifice, but survival, if only to be of further aid to his friends. The importance of this small shift really gets emphasized by pulling us into the perspective of Mr. Peppers, which delights me every time I read it, both for his protectiveness of other summoned creatures and for how neatly it confirms that Timuscor is on the edge of becoming something new. This desire to fight and survive represents that Timuscor has found the answer that he was challenged to find by that ancient supernatural force way back when he was first told, "Death is not the price of a paladin." However, with his sense of self so tenuous, Timuscor cannot connect what that answer means for himself or to his goal. In the calm, after the attack on the village they are staying in, the ancient force visits Timuscor once more, this time to get a grasp on why Timuscor hadn't told its herald, Mr. Peppers, that he had found the answer. We learn here that the only barrier between Timuscor and his dream is his own self-acknowledgement. Timuscor has two questions. Who is he? How can he become a paladin? The ancient force tells him the questions have the same answer. It all but hands Timuscor the answer in that fun way deities and beings older than civilizations like to speak. As with each of the previous points, this idea is again reinforced later in the text, when the town blacksmith basically has to steamroll Timuscor into accepting a holy sword meant for a paladin. As the blacksmith puts it, he has a paladin's eyes. There's just a lot of doubt clouding them. When the final battle of the novel begins, Timuscor has a lot weighing on his mind, not just in regard to his sense of self and his goal of paladinhood, but questions of why they were guided to the village of former adventurers, why an attacking force is keeping them there, and what the hell he and his party can hope to do about it. This means he is primed for some of that adrenaline-filled clarity that rarely seems to arrive outside of dire circumstances. The end of this personal arc starts off with Timuscor finally declaring the true cost of being a paladin out loud, just as the ancient force had asked him to in the last book. The cost of being a paladin is to spend one's life in the service of others, not to die for their party. This is the revelation that the ancient force implied would be followed by a boon that would enable Timuscor to help his friends. A boon Timuscor desperately needs in this exact moment so that he can distract the monster long enough for his party to plan a strategy. Obviously, this means Timuscor immediately gets one-hit KO'd, because really, what better way is there for a mysterious, supernatural force to access your unconscious mind for a mid-battle chat? The ancient force keeps things pretty straightforward as far as mysterious and ancient supernatural forces go. To understand the true cost of being a paladin is to understand what is necessary to be a paladin. And everything Timuscor has achieved up until this point with that understanding in mind has been just that. His achievements. Timuscor had 2 questions. The ancient force told him each had the same answer. Finally, our boy reaches his apotheosis, in a surprisingly non-exaggerated use of the word. Awakening from his chat and his self-doubting stupor, filled to the brim with divine energy, all without needing to beg it off a god, Timuscor, the paladin, sworn protector of the innocent, servant of the kind and the weak, re-enters the battlefield, changing the tide in his party's favor. I considered running down the Timuscor tidbits from Book 5, but really, we've covered the important part. Timuscor can no longer be called a martyr without a cause. There is an argument that he is still a martyr. Paladins of the Spells, Swords, and Stealth universe can only maintain their divine powers by living up to their oaths, something that we have no reason to think is untrue even for Timuscor, who did not get his power from a god. That service is the cost of being a paladin, after all. However, that cost is more of a lifestyle than a quota to be filled each day. Timuscor doesn't spend his days in enforced suffering, angsting over the evils of the world. He no longer seeks to sacrifice himself, and has a firmer grasp of what his boundaries are in serving his role. Admittedly, he would likely rather die than renounce his role and leave innocents to be harmed, but seeing as he is not constantly being faced with that choice, the weight of that conviction is not constantly pulling at his thoughts and exhausting him. Personally, I would consider Timuscor as he is at this stage of the series to be more of a generic hero type than a traditional martyr, but mileage may vary for others. Even if you do consider him to be a martyr of a character, the simple fact is that he does have a healthier mindset about how to go about it. And with that mindset and his new friends, Timuscor still has a chance to grow and develop new dreams for the future after adventuring. He is recovering, and that is the whole point. My first read-through of this series, Timuscor interested me the least. Really, I thought he was kind of plain. Even now, I prefer Thistle, Gabrielle, and Grumpf's stories that have more of an overcoming societal standards kind of bend to them. But time and closer examination have endeared him to me, and a large part of that is because of how he develops into a hero by setting aside his death wish instead of continuing to pursue it. His story, the stories of many recovering martyrs, is one of learning the difference between being kind and fawning, between lending aid and sacrificing, between being willing to die for something and being willing to fight for it. Plenty of great thinkers and storytellers, from Simone Weil to Brennan Lee Mulligan, have concluded that evil is boring. It's easy, but being good, being kind, that's a choice that is complicated, hard even on occasion. The kind of thing that can feel like it takes an all-consuming amount of work. Stories with characters who make that fight their life, be they paladins, superheroes, or more mundane everyday helpers, despite the fact that the work never ends, are invariably more interesting than those of yet another person deciding to be just as cruel as the world has been to them. Recovering Martyrs allow for yet another angle on exploring what it means to be good, how messy that choice can be, and how important it is to take care of yourself if you really want to end up making a difference to the world and to the people you care about. That is why I love them. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, let me know who your favorite recovering martyr is in the comments. See you next time. Until then, keep practicing hope, and don't be afraid to get punk about it.